And hello, everyone. Welcome back to another OAAA lunch break. And today we are up for a real treat, I would say. We are super excited to host one of the smartest men in the industry, one of the smartest people in the industry, and a good friend of mine, Rishad Tobaccowala, author, advisor, and visionary. He is here for a very special lunch break that's going to be full of insights and intel for 2021 and what to look out for. Rishad, for those of you who don't know him, and I know that a lot of our members already do and admire Rishad, but he is the former chief strategist and growth officer for Publicis Group. Rishad continues to consult for Publicis and for Fortune 500 brands, startups, and corporate leaders. And his book, Restoring the Soul of Business, is a required reading for anyone in marketing. Can strongly, strongly recommend it. In today's session, we will hear Rishad's outlook on the future and why we must reinvent ourselves and our companies, and what we need to do if we hope to grow and succeed. And we'll also, of course, learn why Rishad believes that out of home is the future of media. So, like I said, a real treat, and I can't wait to hear what Rishad has to say. So please take it away, Rishad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for everybody who's attending. I'm going to speak for 20 minutes, and then we're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to start with broadly, what are some of the key changes that we all need to be aware of as we build our business, as we build our teams, and obviously as we build ourselves. There are 3.5 big trends today. The first one is one that impacts us even if we are not operating at this level, which is globalization. So globalization continues. It just happens to no longer be necessarily a United States or United Kingdom centered globalization, but because 6.5 billion of the 7.5 billion people live outside the Western world, because 2 billion people have come out of poverty, because most of the growth tends to, which is not United States growth, tends to happen in countries which are global. But as importantly, the biggest opportunities and challenges facing us tend to be global. As I often say, let's use the letter C, the rise of China, climate change, COVID-19, all are global. So to a great extent, one thing that I do say is William Gibson, the writer, said the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. In any particular industry, if you do a deep dive inside your own category in different countries, you might actually get some very nice real life, both focus groups and experiments and experiences. The second one is demographic shifts, which again are occurring all over the world. In the United States, there are 3 very significant demographic shifts. This impacts both the way we market as well as the constituencies of who we market to and who is in our organization. And there are 3 of them. The first one, unsurprisingly, but I'm not sure everybody understands exactly the scale at which it is happening, is how America is becoming a multi-ethnic country. Under 21 next year, the United States will basically be truly multi-ethnic. You may hear the term Caucasian minority. I don't prefer that term. I just prefer sort of a multi-ethnicity. And that is under 21, everyone in the United States. I'm not necessarily basically on average. I'm not just talking about New Mexico or California. It's the entire country. You saw that, for instance, in the Black Lives Matter March, or the protests, which for the first time was basically truly multi-ethnic. It wasn't just Black and African American people, because the young people are multi-ethnic. Why that is important is many of us in management tend to be a couple of generations older than the people who are in this constituency, or these 2 generations. And the way they've grown up and what they believe is very, very different. And we need to keep that very much in mind, whether we're marketing, who we are referring to, and who we're working with. The second big demographic shift is a little bit almost to the opposite, which we may not be paying enough attention to, which is the aging of the United States. So the United States is adding 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. But because of modern healthcare, most people who are over 60, if they can access it, will live a pretty healthy life to 80. But in addition to having those 20 additional years of healthy life, these folks also control more than 65 to 75% of all of wealth in the United States. So while there is a focus on millennials and younger people, most of the wealth happens to be with older people who are going to be living longer. So that's a second shift. And the third demographic shift is the divide between rural and urban areas. We see that in everything from the way people vote to also the way, for instance, this vaccine will be distributed. And since most of us who work in the media and marketing business tend to be urban, and not just urban, we tend to be urban primarily on the coast, along New York, Boston, Washington corridor, San Francisco, LA, that corridor, that we think the rest of the country, including where I sit, which is Chicago, is like a flyover state. Well, most of the population lives in places like this, and we need to keep that in mind when we think about stuff. So we have to keep demographic shifts in mind, and then obviously technology. And with regard to technology, we're entering the third significant age of technology, which I call the connected age. The first connected age was 1993, World Wide Web. We connected to transact, we connected to discover. Google and Amazon were the big winners there. Second connected age began in 2007. We now basically connected all the time, and we were connected to everybody. And that was basically Facebook as well as Apple. We call those connect to transact and connect to discover. We call that e-commerce and we call that search. But human beings call it connect to discover, connect to transact. We call connect all the time mobile. We call connect to everybody social. But that's what people are doing. And so Amazon, Facebook, Google, as well as Apple have been some of the most powerful companies because they've aligned with human needs to connect. We are now entering the third connected age. And by the way, these build on each other. So all of those are successful companies, successful ways to connect. The third one has four forms of connection. And these are going to be particularly applicable to how media further changes and why these, I think, will be even very positive for the out-of-home business. So the first one is data connecting to data, which is machine learning. And machine learning / AI is a major form of connection. And to see the power of this in the world of media, just don't necessarily see how AI algorithms are being used to reach you, whether your Google homepage or your Facebook friends are optimized. I think a very interesting way where it isn't just done with regard to data, but with data plus creativity. And we underestimate how important creativity is in the fastest growing social media company in the world, which is TikTok. TikTok doesn't require you to basically select friends, select a whole bunch of stuff. They use AI in a wonderful way to basically provide content that you get basically addicted to. It's a completely different way of looking at it. You see that now coming in Snap, you see that coming in Pinterest. So modern AI. Second is much faster ways of connecting, 5G, which we can talk about a little later. The third is new ways of connecting. Today, it's voice is the big new way of connecting. In many countries, I believe in the United States, but in my home country of India, where I grew up, though I'm a US citizen, voice is the way now people use search. They don't necessarily type in stuff because they have 23 languages. And then finally, we're all connected to the great God in the sky, which is cloud-based computing. A third connected device that you have, or third connected age device that most of us have, most of you all have at home, is either an Amazon Echo or a Google Home. It uses voice as an interface. It uses machine learning. It is connected to the cloud. The only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't use 5G right now. It basically uses broadband. My prediction is in about 2 or 3 years from now, all of us will no longer basically utilize broadband at home. We will use 5G local hotspots, because 5G, when it works, it particularly works well in cities because of the way the technology works. But when it works at scale, it's approximately 4 times faster than Google Fiber Ethernet at 1 gig, and it tends to be about something like 40 times faster than what we currently have at the average speed at home. So very revolutionary times coming in this third connected age. And with that, clearly with this third connected age, there is going to be significant change coming in all forms of marketing and all forms of business. And what we have to recognize is that while we all tell each other that change is good, I personally, and I believe most people, find that change sucks, because change is good as long as it's happening to somebody else. But if we all have to change, particularly people who are senior managers and senior management, it's difficult. We have to learn new things. We make a fool of ourselves. It's like learning bicycling. You can't learn bicycling on someone else's knees. You learn it on yours, so you fall down. So you don't want to necessarily do that. But while change sucks, irrelevance is even worse. And successful individuals and companies change. Today, there are many, many companies who are basically looking at change. And I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 companies. I'm going to talk about companies that changed and did not change, and then companies, the same company that actually made a big difference by changing. So let's look at United Airlines versus Southwest Airlines. United Airlines and Southwest Airlines have almost the same constraints. They fly the same planes. They fly to pretty much the same airports. They're pretty much FAA rules. One thought about where travel was going, but also recognized that their competitive edge was their people. And so to a great extent, in Southwest, they're actually happy to have you as a passenger. And in United, they prefer if you were dead. So, there's a very big difference. And to a great extent, there's a certain amount of change that goes on. But sometimes companies don't change in the right direction. Let's look at Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo decided that they want to optimize everything on data, everything for the short term. So they started opening up fake accounts. They probably opened up some of the fake accounts to the people that United wanted to kill, because they actually opened up fake accounts for a lot of dead people. I think they've now got their 4th CEO in 5 or 6 years. It's one of the worst investments that Warren Buffett made. And all because they basically changed, but they changed all about math and they forgot all about meaning. You have other companies that basically only talk about meaning and all about like great, vision. A famous company of that is WeWork, which got high on their own marijuana. And to a great extent, it was valued once at $60 billion and then a few weeks later valued at $3 billion, which makes me sort of wonder about why Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase valued something at $60 billion 6 weeks and then $3 billion less, which makes you wonder, like, did they change and do they understand what's going on? So change is a thing that people often talk about, but they don't necessarily do. 3 examples of pretty dramatic and fantastic change is Domino's Pizza, that basically, if you invested in Domino's, you do better than any investment you made in the FANG companies, excepting Netflix, in the last 10 years. And then let's think about companies that are established and then they change. One, very famously, that has turned out to be increasingly well-regarded, increasingly modern, with a new CEO is Walmart after Doug McMillon. But the one that I think is the most interesting, which also links into the third connected age, is Microsoft. For 10 years under Ballmer, Microsoft basically went nowhere. They just yelled and screamed about Windows, Windows, Windows. They pissed in large circles. They threatened everybody. They were basically, they created vaporware, and they were pretty pathetic, all in all. Satya Nadella, who's been there for 25 years, takes over, and he says, okay, we're going to make 4 quick shifts. Number 1, no more stack ranking. We're going to not have people competing with each other. It does not make sense. We're living in a connected and collaborative age. No more stack ranking, which means that bottom 10% get kicked out all the time. If you're competing for your job with everybody around you, how the hell are you going to actually collaborate in a connected age? Second, he said, we have a know-it-all mindset. We got to drop it. We got to go to a learn-it-all mindset. So he gave everybody a book called Growth Mindset. The third thing he basically said is, we are going to be open to the world. We're going to focus primarily on enterprise, besides obviously Xbox. We're going to focus on enterprise, and we're going to be open to partnering. He bought GitHub, which is a big Linux thing. But most importantly, he says, our legacy keeps us constrained. As a result, he destroyed the Windows division. There is no more Windows division. In the last 5 years, Microsoft stock has gone up 500%. And along with Apple and Amazon and Google, it constantly competes to be the most valuable company in the world. So change can happen whether you're small or you're big, but why it happens is because of people. And people is what makes change happen. There are 6 things that make change happen. 3 of them are driven by people, and 3 are about people. The 3 that are driven by people but are not about people is strategy, M&A, and reorganization. And I've been involved a lot in that, and those are very important, but that's not enough. What makes a company change are the next 3, in addition to those 3, which is, can you tell me why it's good for me as someone who's working in the company? Can you tell me what incentives you will give me to make this change happen? And then can you provide the training so I can make it happen? When you do those, you can have amazing things, which you see at Microsoft. The media business, as we move forward quickly in the last 3-4 minutes before I stop speaking, the media business, as we basically move forward, is an amazing business, obviously in the throes of change. But the media that seems to be succeeding the most are media that are what I call mongrel media or hybrid media, which is media that mix and match. As I explained, when you think about the media that is the fastest growing social network combines creativity and AI, which is TikTok. The fastest growing industry combines scripts, movies, and technology. It's called gaming. It's $165 billion. And I believe of what was considered to be legacy, traditional, and these are not necessarily legacy or traditional media, the media that existed before technology became so prevalent, the media that existed before, many of them, because of either leadership issues or a lot of other things, suffered. You saw that happening to magazines. You saw that happening, obviously, to newspapers. You basically, I think, are going to see that happening to a certain extent to television. You already begin to see more and more streaming, and therefore, impacts on television, which now is video. But I believe that every advance in technology has ended up helping the out-of-home industry, because the boards have become screens, number one. They now, because of cloud coming 5G, have become wired in a very interesting way. Because of the sizes, they can go everywhere. Because of localization and phones, it actually benefits. And it, I believe, is going to be the last mass media left, because wired out of home is not only mass media, but it's something that, because you're outside, you're in a store, you're in an elevator, you tend not to be able to basically not look at. So I'm very bullish on the industry. I'm very bullish on the future of media, as long as we all change and reinvent ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rishad. There was a lot there, and I'm going to try and break it down a little bit and go a little deeper in certain things, because I think it's super, super, super interesting. And we talked about this in the prep call. I remember now more warmly than I think I've ever had before, a few years back, or it's probably 5-6 years back, when you and I were sharing a cab ride in Cologne, where we both were for the Mexico conference. And you were very excited about a new iPhone that was coming out that had, I can't remember, it was a 4G phone, and it was sort of a better version of it. And we were talking about it. You had tried it. I was thinking of buying it. It was sort of right around that time when the new iPhone comes out. And again, we were talking about the amazing technology and kind of how 4G had changed media. And first of all, we were in a taxi cab at a conference in Germany. That in itself is today seems very strange, but wonderful. But also, we really moved beyond 4G. And I want you talked a little bit about 5G, but I would love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on 5G for the out-of-home industry. And then I guess mongrel medium means then a medium where technology is the medium's friend. Is that
yes,
right?
Yes. So I'll take this separately, of which then 5G becomes part of the mongrel media. But 5G, there are 3 parts. There are 2 parts of 5G that are very important. One is it's much faster, right? You can download a full at its high speed. So when I go to the Chicago Verizon store using a Verizon phone, I can download a full high definition movie in 11 seconds or 7 seconds. That's how fast it is. It's blindingly fast, which basically means Video can be available pretty much everywhere. Now, initially, it'll be clustered in cities because that's where the technology works at its best. It needs to be there. The second is there is no fall off, which basically means for certain industries, you can basically do, for the first time, you can actually do remote surgery, right? It's pretty interesting. But what it also basically therefore means is the next level of what could be done is there will be no more chokeholds for bandwidth, which has always been an issue. So this morning I was listening to, and one of the things I'm sure all of your leaders are looking at this, pay a lot of attention to what the NBA is doing inside their stadiums. This morning I was listening to Sway, the podcast, and Mark Cuban was the guest. And he was talking a little bit about all the different things that they're doing in the stadiums. And stadiums are, when you think about it, they're out-of-home events, right? Lots of screens, lots of places. And so you're going to see the future of what is possible when there are people and screens of all shapes and sizes inside concert arenas and stadiums. Now, today, obviously, you say who goes to stadiums and concert arenas, but hopefully with the vaccine, et cetera, over time, that's going to sort of, we're going to go back there. But those are ways to look at where technology is, because if you could do anything, including in the future with augmented reality and virtual reality, and you did not have bandwidth as an issue, you can just imagine the custom thing you can do. You can do unique things to each individual. So think about that. As someone walks by with a phone, pretty interesting. So that's number one. With regard to mongrel media, there are two parts of it with mongrel media. One is mongrel media technology. Actually, I had many years ago, when I was much younger, and I was trying to explain to people that there was this thing called digital, right? And people would laugh at me. I had to use like incendiary language to get people to understand. So I said, look, digital is like hydrochloric acid. It burns through the containers of the past, and it burns through what you consider to be media. I said, at its post, I remember I would go to Condé Nast, and I described what would become Instagram before there was Instagram. They should have been doing Instagram. I mean, Instagram is nothing but basically Vogue magazine and Condé Nast, right? But no, it's we are a print magazine, or we are this, or we are that. No, you're not, right? So mongrel media basically is two things. One is technology means all stuff. Like when I basically think about out of home, it can be beautiful statues print if I think about it. If it's a flat screen, it's beautiful print. It can talk to me and sometimes just engage with like a radio. It can be multimedia, right? It can be anything that you can possibly be. So that's one thing that technology helps it, but the other is that it has creativity in it. You know, one of the things that we are going to see this happening in our industry, and I talk with marketers. The line I use is, we are so fixated on the plumbing, we've forgotten the poetry. No brand is built on data, because no human being makes decisions based on data, excepting a few crazies in Silicon Valley, right? Because if that was true, none of us would have children. There's no ROI on children. None of us would buy expensive cars or expensive clothes. Human beings basically make decisions with their heart, and they use numbers to justify what they just did. The other reason I'm so bullish on out of home is the shapes and sizes to have amazing creativity. And that's another form of mongrel media.
Well, I just, in the prep call, you said it too, that out of home is the only form of advertising where technology is always its friend. I will steal that quote from you over and over and over again.
And it is. I mean, just look at it. Everything helps out of home. So in effect, the fact that it isn't growing fast in double digits and triple digits, I ask you all, why isn't it?
Well, I think that's on us a little bit, the industry, because I do think, and I can say this coming back to sort of the 5G, 4G conversation. I started my career selling mobile networks. And it was really, and when you sell a mobile network, you start 10, 12 years before it's actually being rolled out. And what you're supposed to do when you're selling this to an operator is basically describe to them how they're going to make money. So what are the use cases? And it's very hard to imagine. I mean, they've done a good job selling them, because here we are with 5G. But the thing is, if you think about, you talked about these different connected ages, no way could anyone, predict what the iPhone would do for media, or what frankly, what the internet would do for you. Talked about Condé Nast before.
Yeah.
Instagram is one thing. What if Condé Nast had jumped on the commerce revolution? So, they could have made tons and tons of money, but they didn't because they wanted to preserve their old business model. They didn't have the supply chain to become a store. So, and they were journalists, right? So they didn't jump on that thing. And now you have Net-a-Porter and other sites, that are doing just as well the editorial piece as they do the commerce. And they
absolutely. But
so,
the positive, yeah, absolutely. But on the positive end for the industry, for the legacy company that changed, right, is the New York Times.
Yes, that's a good example.
Right? And New York Times stock price is up 450% over the last 5 or 6 years or 7 years.
Well, and they're also, it's very interesting you mentioned New York Times. I mean, the efforts that they're doing, trying to figure out, when the cookie going away and contextual targeting, investing in it, that's very smart, sort of future-proofing their model. With our medium, it's a little surprising, right? Because to your point, we have everything going for us. It's a form of advertising that's been around forever. I think it's really about thinking outside of the box and trying to visualize what this 5G opportunity will be for us and what we can do and what position we play in the advertising ecosystem. But I mean, I think proof's in the pudding. I hope, the willingness to change that you talked about before, that change is hard. I think hopefully the pandemic, in a sense, has inspired us or forced us to change. So, I mean, I'm bullish obviously on out of home for the next decade.
And here's why I believe it's going to be, why I think everyone will change. Because first of all, knowing many people in the industry, this industry is filled with amazingly smart and talented people. So, I can understand if all of us were dumb, but I don't think we're dumb. We're not dumb, right? At least most people aren't. So one of the things I think that's going to make people think is the change 3.5, which I did not talk about. And change 3.5 is still a thing called COVID. And I've written a piece called The Great Reinvention, which, we can shoot to people in the post thing. And where I sort of try to explain to people that in my 40 years of business, I'd never seen anything like this. And because I'm like you, I was traveling globally. I've seen SARS and MERS, and obviously we've seen 9/11 and Great Recession and everything else. And obviously I'm not old enough to have been around for the plague or World War II and Great Depression, but so the last 40 years. Why this is different, and this is a key thing as managers and employees and anybody thinks, why this is different is unlike anything else, it's happened to everybody. Even the Great Recession didn't happen to everybody. It's happened to everybody in every country in the world. That's number one, right? Number two, it's the mother of all crises in the fact that it's financial, economic, health, and social, all happening. And the third is, in my book, I basically have studied about change and why people find it hard to change besides it sucks and what it requires. But one of the things is when you start or stop doing something for 3 months, you create a new behavior. The third thing that's happened to this is, for most people, with the exception of China and maybe New Zealand, this has happened to people for 12 to 18 months. So therefore, any business plan written in December 2019 makes no sense. Everything has changed. I just talked to a bunch of CFOs, and the CFOs have basically said that their technology investments are 8 years ahead of where they were planning to be. Their 2030 plans are being executed in 2022.
Yeah, I'm hoping, and it's interesting that you're saying, it's so true. I love that too, 3.5. And it's true. The pandemic has really changed every single rule in the rule book. But it's interesting. We had Brian Weiser here 2-3 weeks ago from Group M, and very different conversation, but also sort of the future and the future outlook for out of home. And I asked him about our medium and why we don't have a bigger share. And he basically said, yeah, it's your fault. It's up for grabs. Take it. And I do think that for all the members that we have on the call today, that I think that that's a signal, right? Like we should use this opportunity we have now to think differently, new technology, new game plan, and I think grab what we can, right?
And there's actually, it's one other person's fault. Okay, so it's not just your fault. There's another group's fault. Just so that you know, because I don't like blaming. When I lay out blame, I prefer to put it on myself. Now, obviously, I'm no longer working in the agency business, or a buyer or anything. But part of it is the buyers, both at the client and whoever buys at the agency. It's also their issue. But because they're the buyer and you're the seller, It's up to you to have to educate them about what this is. Out of home, for years and years and years, right, has basically been the, along with probably newspaper buying, the sort of the stepchild. It wasn't sexy. There were these crazy specialists and idiot savants that knew how to do this, hidden out in different places, okay, in various ways. So it's considered there. But I think, what do people think is hot in among the buying community? You know, whether it's the client or the agency, right? The four things that they talk about: video,
yeah,
mobile, right? Digital, and personalization at scale. Those are the four things. After they'll put up a whole bunch of language and everything else, but that's basically what it is. Pretty simple. Okay, let's look at your. So, and in somebody's mind, you're like this big fat board somewhere that you drive by. It's not that. As far as I understand, you all are video.
Absolutely.
Right? You all basically are digital.
Yes.
You all are mobile. And because of all the different things you can now do with technology, your personalization at scale. The interesting thing is you can personalize at scale because you can network and wire the entire country for them, or different places, or scale their particular audience, right? In ways, by the way, that isn't limited to a screen where someone's doing a lot of other things at the same time. So in effect, you all are basically the Uber media, without going into the world of Uber, but you know, you're like the big media, but it's very hard for people to learn and unlearn, because they're all, and remember, most of these companies have all been organized for the past, okay? The future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. We organize, we optimize, and we incentivize for the past. And we have to figure out how to change that.
Yeah, it's very, very true on so many levels. But again, technology is again our friend, I think, in this. So we should take advantage of it. But since you brought it up that we're not very good at marketing our medium, I'm going to ask you, because you are an expert, to help me with that a little bit, and for our listeners today. So if you were advising a CMO, out of home, you understand technology, you understand the medium. You're advising a CMO on where to spend the marketing dollars. Where would you and how would you sort of position out of home in their media mix? If they haven't bought it a lot before?
So I would use a term that I use, that I often tell people who are selling. And by the way, I believe every single person is a salesperson. But with that being said, this is what I basically say. I say, let's use first the word save. So you go to a client and you say, I have come to save you, but not in that way, because they'll throw you out of the room. Right? But this is what I mean by save. S is, I'm solving a problem. I'm not selling a media, I'm not selling a medium, I'm solving a problem. What are some of the problems that marketers have today? They have a problem that they have a big problem getting attention. They have a big problem breaking through. And they have a big problem looking like brands that have stature. Because here's what basically happens, as I've explained to people, Facebook is fantastic, but Facebook basically is fantastic for 8 million small business people. It basically puts 8 million small business people equal to the 100 biggest companies in America, right? And to a great extent, it works much better for small business than it does for big business. And on that platform, everybody's exactly the same. So that is, so if you want to basically have stature, you want to break through, you want to have attention, I'm solving that. A is accessibility. I'm easy to access. That basically means you got to figure out how it's easy to buy and understand, but that you can be bought locally, different forms, different formats, easy. Value and values. So value is not just low price, but here's the value. But values is very important. I am dealing a lot now with boardrooms, and obviously I deal with CMOs, but I now, because of my aged state, I'm hanging around in boardrooms. Okay. So in boardrooms, they're asking their CMOs, why have they got themselves into a world where they have to occasionally stop marketing on many of these digital platforms, right? Black Lives Matter boycott.
Yeah.
Young people are asking, if this is the weaponization of social media, who's funding social media? Yes, it's 8 million small companies are 85% of their budgets, but no one can find them. They basically find the big companies to blame, right? So you have your media is actually good for society. It's good for the stores. It's good for locals. It's good for shopkeepers. It's great. It's not, you're not you're not expanding and creating reach for rage. So
No.
there's a big thing to think about values. And finally, experience. Brands are experiences in the end, right? You all can be at places where there are experiences, you all can create experiences, and obviously you're going to make it a great experience working with you all. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, well, yeah, that and for the CMO, that if he does buy out of home impressions, they will all be real, which I think is a good thing for CMO too, right?
It is tangible, seeable, and by the way, this still exists. Like when I was growing up in the media business, one audience we always used to have was the sales force, right? They always basically said, even when I was doing digital, they said but nobody sees it. Like, where do I go see this banner? Where do I go see this thing? But therefore, there was always this thing about, you got to buy a television ad. You got to buy some big out of home so people can see it. Even today, so I'll give you sort of an interesting thing. It's got nothing to do with this, but it has something to do with this. So last week, the big news was GameStop. Okay. So for those of you who haven't, hang out on the Reddit, the Wall Street thing. And there you see people showing how they are basically buying ads, out of home ads all over the country, basically saying, hold on, and all of that on GameStop. Yeah. They're proud of out of home. They're talking about television. They aren't talking about anything else because they can take pictures of it. The most Instagrammable media in the world is out of home.
Yeah, and it's great reach and great for influencing. I was actually talking to a member the other day. They're getting not just Reddit, all these different companies who want to start a similar type of buzz around them, like GameStop did, are out there now buying out of home ads because it's a good way to get in front, in particular, actually younger audiences. So with that said, I mean, not just you talked about Black Lives Matter and movements, and we're in a global pandemic and people are sensitive, but there's so much going on now, in particular with younger generations. We talked about it in the prep too, that marketers should be aware of: new platforms, new behaviors, new media interests, new in general. So what should marketers be most tuned into when it comes to the consumer of today? And in particular, I guess the younger ones, or the early adopters such as yourself.
So there are 3 points of focus for everybody. This not only includes marketers, but includes everybody that one should think about. The first one is think human, don't think technology first. We have started thinking technology and data first versus thinking about humans first, right? So this piece that I will send you all, and then you can send everybody, called The Great Reinvention. I've had to make it look really good. So I had a designer make it look good because a lot of boards wanted to send it around. And so instead of saying, okay, here's my Substack, I had someone design something that they could send out. So it's a Adobe Spark document. But what they said is, you approach everything from a human, society, and business perspective, and you never talk about technology, but it's clear that you are talking about technology, but you never talk about it, right? And it says, that's what we all understand. And in effect, I basically defined this. I wrote this in April last year, and I said, this is going to last for 12 to 18 months, when everybody thought it was going to go to 2 or 3 months, because I studied this. I went backwards and said, what happens when this happens? That's number one. Number two, we're going to go through 3 phases. This is in April, May, in writing, right? We're going to have a phase called fragility. And for fragility, we're going to basically, every brand and marketer is going to say, they're going to talk about safety, security, and how they do good to society. That's number one. Then we're going to go to a stage called resilience. And resilience, and by the way, this is going to happen at the society level, at the business level, and the individual level. So I explain how all of those work. Like at the society level, for instance, I basically said good government is going to matter again. You're going to see strong unions. You're going to see companies talking about what they're doing for society. as part of resilience. You're going to see every company becoming omni-everything, omni-channel, omni-delivery, omni-everything, above the line, below the line. You're going to see them manage their balance sheet. You're also going to basically see them try to manage their variable costs and have more and more flexible workers. That's a different thing I've written about, which is right. And then we're going to go to this third stage, which is where we are, which is resurrection, right? So we go from fragility to resilience, and we go now in the resilience to resurrection phase. And it was all done in English. It was all done in basically English. And the thing that we underestimate is, why are we talking in gibberish? Let me tell you the gibberish, okay? Here are 6 words. If you take these 6 words away from your presentations, explain to me what you got left, okay? I may not remember all the 6 words. I'll just throw one out. Data lake, disruption, platform, scale, network, and personalized. But take those 6 out. You got no deck. You just got gibberish because you just use gibberish. And my own stuff, I don't understand what you people are talking about. Talk to me in English, right? So that's the one thing. The second thing I would basically do is spend a lot of time recognizing that the people that we are marketing to are gods. They have godlike power. So when anybody tells me, I've empowered and enabled my customer, I said, you are stupid. I don't say that, I'm not rude. I say, I don't think that's correct. I believe I'm already enabled and empowered. What are you going to do? Right? Yeah. There's this basic belief. And it's ridiculous. And the third one, which is very, very important, is internally. The single best investment any company can make is in the upgrading, the training, and the inspiration of their people. Because people make the difference. My Southwest and United example, it's people made the difference. The difference between Costco and Walmart before Doug McMillon was Costco people versus Walmart people. Every piece of data basically shows that if you don't invest and upgrade your people, you got an issue. Now, people are beginning to realize this. I realized basically when I do my speaking stuff, there's no event budget, but guess which department has not lost any of its budget? HR, right? And what are people now thinking? If you actually think about your people, or people, I don't have anybody, I'm by myself, but people, there are 3 key things we're realizing. One is they want people to talk to them as humans. 2, many of them are a little bit depressed and tired. This has been going on. It looks like it's going to go on till Labor Day at least before anybody can get to some form of life. Depending on who they are, mothers are having a real tough time at home. More women are leaving the workplace. So the empathy of your people and how you can help your people becomes a very big thing. How you can talk to them, how you can provide them with training and resources is a huge thing that I would think about.
Yeah, it's very good. That's very true. And I think also the flip side of that, I think about that a lot. And as we're as the OAAA embarking on a major diversity initiative, it's also learning from your people, and their diversity is important, both when it comes to gender, sexual orientation, race, and above all age, to really understand where consumers are. You have your own focus group in front of yourself and let that influence you. Because again, changes will happen so fast, especially now, major technology shift coming out of a pandemic, that I think that's incredibly good advice. And by the way, I'm so glad you didn't mention the word pivot, because I used that in my
pivot's a good word. We use it, but we don't pivot enough. We should.
Well, I'm glad that's one of the words. I was just waiting for it to come, and thought that would be a little embarrassing on this call. So thank you for that. We don't have a lot of time left, but we did get some audience questions before. So if you have time, Rishad, can I shoot you?
Absolutely, you bet, absolutely.
Rapid fire that I think they really want to hear. So first of all, which is your out-of-home format and why? Favorite out-of-home format and why?
My favorite out-of-home format still is the biggest screen I can find. So I find, whether it's when I used to travel, all across Times Square or Piccadilly Street, I just like big screens because it's the last big screen that's left.
Good one. Thank you for that. The other one is hard to answer rapid fire, but I'm going to challenge you to try and do it. What's the #1 thing to change about media selling in general?
Use the word save and don't try to sell media. Solution, access, value, experience.
Very good. Like that. Then this one I really like. With the large increases in e-commerce generated by the pandemic, what is out-of-home's unique advantage in the new retail environment? That's a really, really good one, actually, I think.
I believe that lower funnel in the real world occurs in stores, grocery stores, convenience stores, electronic stores. These stores basically want to do three things at the same time. They want to enhance their experience, so there's a reason for people to come in. That's number one. Number two, they want to increase external points of income. Number three is they want to increase sales to the cash register. I'm actually working, and since I do not promote my own book, I'm working with not my book. My book everybody can buy, but the companies I help. But I'm working with a company that actually helps basically find ways using just the existing technology of television sets with technology in people saying to make the back office, which is employees, work better, be more informed, and the front, which is to drive more sales by providing more forms of entertainment and other things. So what basically happens is I believe that you're going to see everyone saying, I want better measurement from retail as I get from e-commerce. And retail is going to say, I want to have a better experience, more sales, better measurement, and an extreme form of environment. Therefore, every single retail space in America becomes out-of-home inventory.
Spot on. Thank you for that one. One final question that I think everyone kind of knows the answer they want, but I'm hoping you're answering truthfully here. Tough one. As a world, when will we ever get back to normal after this pandemic? What do you think?
I have basically said there is never going to be a new normal. We are going to enter into a new strange. And we keep wanting to go back to a new normal. We aren't. It doesn't mean I'm not optimistic and things aren't going to get really good and better. I anticipate that as long as we remember that this is a global phenomenon and the Western countries don't basically simply say we look after ourselves and we won't look after anybody else, I think we should be in pretty good stage by early 2022. In the United States, I think we will get back to a pretty interesting life, assuming we follow the rules by Labor Day. But I believe we will wear masks all year long.
Yeah. That's.
But by the way, but things will be better. Things will be better as we move forward, as long as we can keep our wits about us. I'm right now much more. What I'm really worried about is the emotional state when people can't provide hope, because that's what people are, right? For the next 6-7 months, because we had thought we had seen the light at the end of the tunnel. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There's very encouraging news, but it just takes a little bit of time, including in the United States. There's 300 million people that have to be inoculated twice.
Yeah, no, it is true. And I think everyone sort of thought that it would change 2021 and it would be a new world. And it's not like that. But yeah. I try to think of it as we've done more than half of it, if your forecast is right. I was hoping more Memorial Day than Labor Day, but at least, we're coming up on a year now. So we've done more than half, and we know more than we did before, and we're closing in.
And what I would say is, I've written a piece, which I'll also send you, which is 6 things to do over the next 6 months. Because many of us basically have been given, I don't play golf, but there's apparently a term in golf called mulligan, which is you get a do-over, right?
Yeah.
So my whole stuff is, look, the next 6 months are going to look like the past 6 months. If you knew everything about the past 6 months, what would you do differently, right? And a big part of it is how do you invest, how do you learn, how do you build relationships, how do you do the things that, okay, instead of basically saying, I hate what my situation, your situation can't change. There's some things you can't imagine your situation in a different world. So, okay, with these constraints, how do I do the best I possibly can? And in those, I basically said, here are things that you can do, which can make you a better person, a better leader, a better family, right? And you'll never get this chance again. I'm telling you, we will look back, right? And say, we wish we had when we had this opportunity.
Well, Rishad, well spoken. Thank you for an incredible webinar where you have provided your personal view on the industry, advice for how to handle COVID, great business advice, sales tips, and a future outlook. So I can't thank you enough. You are incredible. And I know, seeing the comments, that I'm not the only one who thinks so. For all of you who are on the call, Erica, I believe, shared links to Rishad's work in the chat box, but we will also send an email out to everyone who RSVP'd to this session with a link to the video and with all the different pieces that Rishad has mentioned. There may be a few, Rishad, that we hadn't talked about before that you mentioned now, so we'll follow up with you. So
I'll send those to you. I'll send those to you. So rishad.substack.com is the easy place to go, but I'll send you all of the stuff.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone.
Thank you again for the opportunity and for everybody to listen. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you, Rishad. And thank you for all of you who are here. Have a great rest of your day and take care. Thanks.